Every man with Custer died on that hill. Over 210 soldiers gone fast, leaving only silence behind. The only real words left from his command? A scratched note begging for packs. "Benteen, come on, big village, be quick, bring packs." No hero's speech, no famous farewell. Yet within months, Custer's last words were everywhere. Textbooks, news, even poems quoted by people who weren't there. Why did survivors and authors invent lines Custer never said? Why did the world want them so badly? This is why survivors lied about Custer's last words. And uncovering the truth means facing what really happened when no one was left to tell the tale. The silence was a gift, but the lies changed history. So, what filled that deadly void? Captain William Cook's handwriting rushed across a scrap of paper. The message was short, every word clipped by urgency. "Benteen, come on. Big village. Be quick. Bring packs. P.S. Bring packs." Cook wrote as bullets snapped through grass and dust. He handed the note to Giovanni Martini, a trumpeter with a thick Italian accent and a battered uniform. Custer's order was clear: no speeches, just a plea for speed and supplies. Martini tucked the paper into his jacket and rode hard, dodging scattered gunfire and the confusion of the battlefield. He reached Captain Benteen, handed over the note, and watched as officers read the lines in silence. That piece of paper, creased, stained, and later entered into the official record, became the only direct message from Custer's command to survive the day. The handwriting matched Cook's other orders, verified by experts decades later and shown at the Reno Court of Inquiry in 1879. No one who received the note ever claimed it held anything but a logistical demand. There was no rally, no poetic goodbye, just a desperate call for help as the fight spiraled out of control. The note's chain of custody is airtight. Cook wrote it, Martini delivered it, Benteen kept it, and Army investigators preserved it. Every other so-called last word appeared only in stories, not in the hands of men who were there. That silence in the record left a blank space, and before long, others rushed to fill it. Every man who rode with Custer that day died before help arrived. The 5 companies under his direct command, more than 200 soldiers, were wiped out to the last man. Not a single officer, scout, or enlisted trooper survived to tell what was said in those final moments. The dead lay scattered in tangled grass and shallow draws, stripped by the elements and by time. Their mouths could not speak. Their hands left no written record. The only sounds that lingered after the gunfire faded were the wind and the cries of scavenger birds. Army casualty lists tell the same story. Out of 268 killed across the regiment, about 210 fell with Custer. Benteen, Reno, and the men who linked up with them survived because they never reached Custer's position. The Crow and Arikara scouts who rode with Custer's column were either sent away before the last stand or broke off under orders. No one from Custer's immediate circle made it out. This silence left a vacuum. The Army's official reports offered only numbers and names. Newspapers printed casualty lists, but no eyewitness accounts from the heart of the disaster. Families waited for word that would never come. The battlefield itself offered no answers, just sun-bleached bones and broken weapons. Without survivors, there could be no true account of Custer's last words. The story was left unfinished, and in that emptiness, imagination began to work. Others would soon step in to supply the missing lines. Frederick Whitaker moved fast. By December 1876, just 6 months after the battle, his biography of Custer hit the shelves. Whitaker never saw the battlefield. He leaned on rumors, army gossip, and the hunger for a hero. His book gave Custer grand speeches and brave last words, all invented. These lines filled the gap left by silence and set the tone for what followed. Curly, the Crow Scout, became another early source. At first, his story was simple. He did not witness Custer's last moments. But over the years, Curly's tale grew. By the 1880s, newspaper interviews showed new details, sometimes added by translators or eager reporters. Each retelling pushed Curly closer to the center of the last stand, and his words became more dramatic. Libby Custer, the general's widow, took things further. Starting in 1885, she published memoirs and gave speeches. Her books painted Custer as a martyr, always brave, always noble. She worked with publishers, shaped textbook stories, and corrected authors who strayed from her version. Libby's campaign stretched over decades, making sure her husband's legend and his supposed last words became part of American memory. Newspapers needed stories, and the Army needed answers. In the days after Little Bighorn, reporters filled columns with speculation and rumor. Editors demanded details, any details, to satisfy a public stunned by defeat. Without survivors from Custer's 5 companies, journalists leaned on second-hand tales, anonymous sources, and sheer invention. Headlines promised the general's final words, but the articles delivered only hearsay and drama. Army officials, under pressure to explain the disaster, stayed silent on the facts, but welcomed stories that painted Custer as brave and blameless. The Reno Court of Inquiry, held in 1879, focused on the actions of surviving officers, not on what Custer said before he died. No witness at the inquiry claimed to have heard a last speech. Still, the absence of clear answers left room for legend. Each retelling in print made the story bolder. Soon, the myth of Custer's heroic last words was everywhere, on front pages, in speeches, and in the halls of Congress. The void became a legend because the press and the Army both needed it to be. The myth didn't just grow in books and headlines. It drew in people looking for a piece of the legend. Over 200 men came forward in the decades after Little Bighorn, each claiming to be the sole survivor of Custer's last stand. Some told stories of crawling away wounded. Others said they played dead among the bodies or slipped through the chaos when the shooting started. None matched the official casualty lists or the Army's records. Their names ran in small-town papers and dime novels. A few even drew crowds, selling autographs and telling their tales on lecture circuits. Each new claimant offered a different set of Custer's supposed last words, each more dramatic than the last. The real survivors, officers from other companies, dismissed these stories, but the public kept listening. The appetite for a living witness was so strong that the market never dried up. For decades, the legend thrived on imposters, each one feeding the need for a final message from Custer's lost command. Archaeologists walked the Custer sector with flags and metal detectors, mapping where bodies and cartridge cases fell. They found no defensive ring, no cluster of men making a last stand. Instead, the remains stretched across gullies and open slopes, scattered in small knots and lines. Richard Fox's team logged dropped rifles and spent shells, each marking a moment of panic or retreat. Lakota and Cheyenne elders described the end as sudden, a rush, not a siege. Their stories say soldiers broke and ran, some falling alone, others in pairs, none with time for speeches or farewells. The pattern on the ground and in native memory. Matches. The fight ended fast, with no chance for a dramatic final word. The legend fades in the face of bone and earth. Textbooks kept the legend alive for generations. Early editions from the American Book Company and State School series described Custer giving brave words to his men, even when no source existed. Lines like, "We will fight to the death," appeared in sidebars and summaries, lifted straight from novels and memoirs. Regional histories in Montana and Dakota schools repeated speeches on the hilltop, never citing witnesses. These errors lasted well into the 20th century. Even popular texts like The American Pageant used mythic language until recent updates added notes about the lack of survivors. Online, history forums and Wikipedia talk pages now flag these mistakes, tracing fake last words back to their printed roots. Fact-checkers on Reddit and Snopes have dismantled dozens of textbook claims, showing that only Cook's short note ever left the field. Today, the myth is easier to spot, but its shadow still lingers in old school books and family stories. Custer's command left behind 210 dead and only one authenticated message. Cook's written note: logistics, not last words. No soldier with Custer survived to speak. For decades, stories of Custer's dramatic final speech echoed in textbooks, newspapers, and public memory. Primary sources, battlefield archaeology, native eyewitness accounts, and the Reno Inquiry transcripts show no evidence for any farewell or last stand. The gap left by silence was filled by writers, claimants, and Libby Custer's campaign to protect her husband's reputation. Over 200 false sole survivor claimants emerged, and heroic lines were invented to meet public demand. Yet no direct witness ever existed. Some questions remain, such as how specific phrases first took root, or why certain versions lasted longest in print. But the facts are clear. Custer's real last words are lost, and the famous quotes are fiction. This case shows how myth grows when evidence is missing, and why checking the records still matters today.